Hello, everyone. We welcome you today for our Sunday morning roundtable discussion. Today is Sunday, August 25th, 2019. We are recording from the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, Plainfield, New Jersey, the United States of America, and we warmly welcome you all. And we will start today with our morning prayer.
From the Divinity Course in General Collectania, the Blue Book, page 224. Oh, may the light that is never dim so encompass you that no night is there. May his angels hold thee in their power, and songs of science be heard in the intuitions of thought till your life is in tune with the rhythm of God.
Thank you. This morning our subject is on mind, and we will begin first, though, with our watching point.
Watching point number 436. Watch lest you forget, in your need to solve difficult problems and to study the letter of Christian Science, to take time to soar mentally into the realm of spiritual uplift in order to contemplate heaven peopled with spiritual beings governed in perfect harmony. We need to refresh our hearts and souls with this vision at frequent intervals, lest we dwell on error until we make a reality of it, or become weary in well-doing. It was for this reason that Mrs. Eddy once said to the students in her home, quote, "Let your minds go out every 2 hours. All is peace, goodwill, love, etc. Say nothing of error. Confine your thoughts to the right side." End quote. If you make a treadmill out of your science work, you are liable to keep errors alive day after day, working on them endlessly, as a woman would do on a sock she was knitting if she never toed it. We must work on error and then have done with it, in order that we may progress through the unlabored motion of the divine energy and fill our thoughts with good. End quote.
Thank you. Any comments on that?
Well, Mrs. Evans used to remind us regularly in our work 10 affirmations to 1 denial. That seems to be the proportion that Mrs. Eddy is recommending to us.
Thank you. It's very easy to get caught up in what's wrong, and we must make sure we are not. If we do that, we become part of the problem. I find it interesting, and you should go through your watches, prayers, and arguments and make note of what Mrs. Eddy is telling us to do daily. She daily tells us we should be handling the belief of accidents. She often talks about eyesight. And then recently we had the watch message daily being handling the newspapers. And of course, that includes all media. Because what happens is they use the media to spread lies and convince people of these lies. And so in doing, mesmerize nations, worlds. We must be ever on guard to this. And she knew this, which is why she had the Christian Science Monitor, which now is also no longer what it once was, because everything in the organization has been tainted, poisoned, corrupted, unfortunately, but that's all right.
Yeah, I mean, it was taken over by the human mind and therefore could not forward the cause of Christian Science. The human mind is incapable of knowing anything about God.
She also gives a list on page 282 of the Blue Book to say, to repeat several times a day, God is all, evil is not, health is all, harmony is all, spirit is all, joy is all, truth is all, faith is all, life is all, love is all.
Thank you. That's how our treatments should be on that, knowing these truths. This is what we'll talk about later, but this is the prayer and fasting. The prayer is filling our thoughts up with what is good, the enduring the good and the true, declaring for the right side. That is the prayer. And the fasting is to shut out all the negativity of the human mind in whatever way it comes to you. It can come in many ways. Certainly the media, movies, books, your own family members. So ever on guard.
And behind all of this is the fact that the whole point of our prayers and our treatments is to destroy error. I mean, that is the point of it, is to destroy error. So it's good to ask yourself, have I destroyed error? And it's the truth that does the destruction. So filling your consciousness with the truth is the surest way of destroying whatever error you may seem to need to handle.
And where do you destroy it?
In thought.
Yes, in your own thinking. Not you go out with a sword and bash everything. This is in your own thinking. And then when you get that peace, you've destroyed it. And that's one tremendous work going on, one light shining brightly.
Yeah, and that's a good point. You don't destroy it in anybody else's consciousness. God
Right.
does that.
That's a big temptation to just try to destroy it, seeing it elsewhere and wanting to destroy it elsewhere. It's your consciousness.
That's why Mrs. Evans used to remind us, nobody ever wins an argument.
That what?
She also says that the chief blow in this process is to know the nothingness of that error. So.
Go ahead, Shardy.
Well, on our watch page, our daily watch page, I have that, what Mrs. Etty said, that there's only one God. Don't come in your own mind and don't try to change any minds.
Thank you. Yes, that's so good. Right. Very important. Always within. And I love in Parthen's forum, which goes along with what we're talking about, where the man was Christ, Jesus healed the lunatic man. And it said, it is significant that the healing of this child came after Christ Jesus had returned from that sacred mountaintop experience known as the Transfiguration. So you see, this is what we're talking about, getting your thoughts so full of God, good, being the only presence and power. And then it says, then she goes on to say, this is an article, prayer and fasting in an early Christian Science Sentinel. Before that pure elevation of thought, disease could have no witness and so melted away into its own nothingness. I love that. Prayer and fasting. When your thought is so in the divine, in that spirit, disease, sin, death can have no witness. You can't even see it. I always liken it to the sun shining so brightly that the darkness cannot have any presence. It would be impossible. And all sin, disease, and death are darkness, the absence of light. All it ever is. And we must always remember that. We're not battling some huge, big power.
Yeah, thank you for that, because the no witness thing reminds me of Mrs. Eddy saying that we give air all the power it has. So if we're not witnessing for it, then
that's it.
done.
But that's not it. It has to have a depth to it. It's not a superficial, oh, it doesn't exist, nothing, everything's fine. In the meantime, things are blowing up. No, it's got to have a depth and an understanding to it. So, okay, our golden text today is 2 Timothy. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Any comments on that?
What a different thought that is than the Christianity I grew up with, which was pretty much all fear. Every action you did was all about, all around your fear of going to hell or something like that. So
thank you. That's very true.
And then the fatalistic thought that, whatever happens, it's the will of God. So, and I have nothing to do about it. So suck it up, right?
Yeah. It's a will that this child died, or it's a will that this happened or that happened. God's will.
And there's also the other thing that's prevalent in scholastic theology, that we're sinners. We have a sound mind. That is a very, very precious gift. We don't need to think those thoughts of sin. We're not to fall for those suggestions.
And also of love. There's a prevalent belief that evil is real, and it's a normal part of life, and we do what we can to defeat it, but it is real. Well, no. The reason we want to defeat it is because it's not real. It's not of God. And it's love that defeats it. Divine love, not human love.
This verse was given to me. It was one of the first given to me by Mrs. Evans years ago when I was in a terrible state of fear all the time. And I found, and this is the amplified version of the Bible, which says this: God did not give us a spirit of timidity, of cowardice, of craving and cringing, fawning fear. Whew, that's quite a description.
Hooray.
Right. Because honestly, when you're in that fearful state, you're coward, you're timid, you're cringing. But he has given us a spirit of power and of love and a calm and well-balanced mind with discipline and self-control. Now that helped me a lot, because in order to practice science, you have to be disciplined. I had to learn this. You can't be lazy and let it just go every which way. You had to take control of the reins and be disciplined into what you're thinking. That was really hard for me. I thought, well, goodness, I'm just thinking. I think thoughts just come. I'm not responsible. I've been thinking like this. If you're thinking crummy thoughts, you are responsible, and you got to rein those in. So calm, well-balanced mind, discipline, self-control. Those are all qualities of God that all of us can express and should express. This is what we work to instill in our children, or we should.
And what is the discipline? As a practical matter, what is it?
Well, you gotta control your thoughts and your feelings when things come in. You gotta be aware. You gotta recognize it. You gotta fight against it.
And do it every moment.
Do it every moment.
Yeah, Mrs. Eddy says, stand porter at the door of thought. Isn't that the discipline? Be aware of the thoughts that come to you. I mean, you're being bombarded by thoughts all the time. If you read, if you talk to people, if you watch anything on the television, is this thought coming from God? Or is this thought garbage, propaganda, error?
It's like when you see people walking down the street or having something to do with people. I mean, you have to shut out any critical thought. I never allow any criticism to come into my thought. Learn that.
Well, that's absolutely right. You're to be saying, Hail, Son of God, not being critical of them. Sometimes something might come to you that needs healing, and that you heal. You don't leave it in the negative. You might see someone that seems troubled or something, so you correct it in your own thought, and that's very different than saying, oh, well, look at that person. He looks like this, that, or the next thing, which you hear a lot of people do.
And when something comes to you to tempt you, and it's wrong, you are critical of it. You should be critical of it. You should hate it. Not the person. Not the person, but the thought. Zero tolerance of error. This is the discipline that Mrs. Eddy requires.
And really, without it, you get to a point, without it, you cannot practice science. You can't be lazy and be a Christian Scientist. It requires this. But you see, this is the mind of God that we are given. This is why we declare daily for it. God is mind. God is my mind. God is the only pure and perfect mind. And know we have this mind. Acknowledge it. Feel it. And then work with it. And don't let all these other suggestions, they come to attack your Christ consciousness. And you must stand order at the door of thought, as Gary said, and not admit entrance. And then she says, and then you will control yourself harmoniously. Otherwise, you're at the beck and call of everything. That's not having dominion. Someone comes up and, tells you you're ugly or something else, and so you lose your peace for 3 months. As Gary likes to tell me, that's not my problem, it's their problem. Don't let it become my problem. Don't react.
Unfortunately, we all have the power to do it. We have the God-given power to do it. Because that is the image and likeness of God, is having that power. God does not know evil. Therefore, we have the power to destroy it when it attempts to enter our consciousness.
And the lesson does say we are not of ourselves. So if we respect the fact that we are the reflection, what God is, then we can identify with this right mind, stay with it.
Thank you. This is a God-given power. It is not human will.
So when I was going through this time in my life when I was so afraid all the time, I worked with this, remembering that I did have the spirit of a power, not my own power, the power of God, the spirit of love, not some human love, but divine love. And then of a sound mind, which protects all these things. That's the discipline, the self-control to protect your Christ consciousness and not allow these other thoughts to come in. This is how we maintain that Christ consciousness. I was also taught that sometimes when you are anxious, you need to at least ask God, not at least, at best, ask God, is there anything I need to know? Sometimes you're anxious for a reason. Sometimes maybe you're doing something or you're about to do something that you shouldn't do. And God is trying to press himself on you, so you listen. So take heed. It's not always a bad thing. Pay attention to how you're feeling. But if you're in a chronic fear and you're just afraid of everything and anything, well, that's just a human negative mind. And honestly, it took me work. I did not just have a magic wand come over me and it was gone. And Mrs. Evans had a lot of patience working with me on this. And there were many other things she gave me that I've also shared with you through the years. Because fear is very common. I thought this was very interesting. And I haven't checked it to be true, but I trust it to be true, that God encourages us not to fear 365 times in the Bible. So what does that mean?
Every day. Every day, don't fear.
Every day. Every day. Every day he's telling you not to fear. So I mean, sometimes you can accept it intellectually, but you need to accept it in your heart, in your mind and soul, and know that the basis of fear is a belief that there is another power besides God, and that's disobeying the first commandment, where we're getting out of dwelling in the secret place of the Most High, and we put ourselves into another place where we are bombarded and tormented and in misery, which leads us to two of the stories. The first one, what is that story, Jeremy?
Oh, the how Jesus was taken to the man with diverse diseases and torments.
Yes.
The Gadarene.
What's a demon?
To me, I felt tormented mentally. Who knows what upsetness?
Certainly he was.
The unsound mind.
Yeah.
The unsound mind. What was your definition?
The demon. Those little thoughts, the disturbing thoughts that come to us that seem plausible, so we accept them, and then we ruminate and we chew on them. We consider how plausible they might be. We complain about them.
We tell all our friends and neighbors.
We wonder what to do about them. In other words, we give them life. And then they start to govern our actions. We do things that we wouldn't ordinarily do. It colors the way we see everything. We see evil everywhere instead of God's goodness everywhere. And eventually, if we continue, it turns into the big red dragon.
Well, and they call it possessed. You know, the Christians say toehold, foothold, stronghold. Then you have trouble, seems to be possessing you. And it is a tormenting thoughts that you can't seem to control because you did not control them in the first instance. The definition of it, I looked it up. It says an evil spirit, especially one to possess a person, or act as a tormentor in hell. And that's what it feels like. It feels like you're in hell. Sometimes it can come as an addiction. Again, starts out. This is Eddie, and I've quoted this a lot recently. This isn't a direct quote, but she says Adam, that means Adam and Eve, starts his reign mildly. It comes as something you would accept. And then it builds and builds and builds. Again, toehold, foothold, stronghold. So shut it down immediately. As a scientist, you should begin to question these thoughts. I read, and this is in the Bible, but does anyone know what the 7 deadly sins are?
Lust, greed.
Yes, it's 2 of them, lust and greed.
Envy.
Envy.
Hatred.
Yes.
Sloth.
Sloth.
Gluttony.
Gluttony, yes. Wrath and pride. Those are the carnal mind things that come in to take you over, and you can call them demons. And what did you write about on the forum, Linda, about that?
Well, I liked where Mrs. Eddy talked about this and Jesus casting it out. So I looked up cast out, and it said to drive out, to expel, banish, kick out, throw out, drive out, forced to leave, eject. I mean, it was, and to leave permanently, it said, especially permanently. And so, I mean, in order to get that healing, it had to be cast out. You had to see it. So it seems to me that you have to see what this, it's like when you're teaching here. You have to know what air's doing, how it operates, see it, then you have to cast it out.
Thank you.
Like the eject.
Yeah,
eject. You just have a picture of it flying.
Vigorous.
And
yes, vigorous.
Did you write about it too, Jeremy?
Yes, we did.
Oh yeah, I had just been looking at precepts, and I found this thing, and I thought I should save that somewhere. And then I went on the forum. I'm like, oh well, here it is. So Gilbert Carpenter said, the practice of Christian Science is a highly dangerous profession, since the practitioner is daily confronted by sick folks who have such a conviction of the seriousness of their afflictions, which are supported by the evidence of the senses, that if the healer becomes careless or too mentally lazy to reject and challenge every illusion that attempts to fasten itself upon him, so that he acknowledges its existence, he may find himself partaking of the same error. It is plain, therefore, why Mrs. Eddy did not want the students to fall victim to the error by looking at it, talking about it, thinking it over, and how to meet it, as we read on page 130 of Miscellaneous Writings, since she says that this has the same power to make you a sinner that acting thus regarding disease has to make a man sick.
Thank you. Now, this isn't anything to be afraid of. I know it starts off like it's dangerous. Well, it's true. You shouldn't be in the practice that Florence and I are doing, having to listen to this all day and be lazy about it. But this is where the rebukes come in. You have to. If you think you don't, well, just try standing in that position for a while and listening to everybody tell you these things. And you know in your own head, they came to your thought, you would eject it. You would kick it the heck out. You wouldn't go on and on with this kind of thought. But you are all practitioners, and you all hear error every day. And this is where you can't be cowardly and timid and not have the strength from God to kick it out, and also to see it is not personal, not real, it's not a person, place, or thing. It is a false suggestion trying to lodge itself. A little demon let's see where I can find a home. Let's see who I can get. That one looks like she's a jealous person. I'll just flip over to her. Ha, 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 ha.
And as dangerous as it is in the practice, for most of us, it's most difficult in our own families. Because if we are with people that we've lived with for a long time, and if we have accepted traits about them that are not godlike, it's easy to compromise and live with it, and it would rob us of our Christliness. It would rob us of our ability to practice. As we might otherwise want to.
So this is a requirement. It's over and over in Mrs. Eddy's teachings. A veil has been cast on that. Everyone likes the loving. Oh, we must be loving. That's why when you find a practitioner that does rebuke, they usually, oh, look at her. She's got a nasty temper. That's what they said about Mrs. Evans and Mrs. Eddy, which is why they tried to hide some of the things she did. It wasn't a temper.
I just read that in a book that was published from Boston, and that's exactly what they said, that in some of Mrs. Eddy's writings, she admitted that she had this weakness and temper and lost her, basically in their words, I'm not saying it word for word, but that she lost her composure. I just read that actually right before this class.
Wow.
And it was it's just very humanizing, and just, it's like they have no concept that the rebuke was for error and it wasn't out of anger. She even said it. They even said that she said it, but they said it was her showing her weak moment and that she had that temper at times.
When in fact it was her strong moment.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Cast it out.
She was casting out a demon. And the demon didn't like it. So it accused her of losing her composure. I wonder what the guys in the temple said about Jesus when he overturned the tables.
Especially the money.
Was that his weak moment?
His rebuke was fearful.
Darn right it was.
Yes.
And that's how we should all be. Error should be afraid of you.
That's it. You turn the tables. You don't be afraid of it. You don't think it's dangerous. Hell's bells, as my dad would say. You better be formidable. That word formidable. People ought to feel that when they're around you. And certainly error should feel it when it's around you. It won't approach you. It gets where it won't. It knows who it can get to. So
I think if you're really being loyal to this whole practice, it builds up. You get there where you will not tolerate it. That's all.
Yeah. It's absolutely true, because I was one who could not discipline a dog. I couldn't say a mean thing, which I thought was a mean thing, because I personalized error. I wouldn't speak up. It grows in you as you are loyal to the truth. Thank you. It just it starts happening. And I don't feel angry when I give a rebuke. I feel angry at a certain error that seems to be taking over a person to some degree. I do feel that. I loathe the error, but I'm not upset with the person at all. Often they think that, but I'm not.
You wouldn't pay attention if you didn't have it be firm, at least as far as I can tell for myself. If it wasn't firm, it wouldn't shock you, and then you wouldn't listen. You wouldn't hear it.
Yeah. It's the audacity of it. I think it's what you said. Just get.
And it's aggressive, and so you have to be aggressive. You have to be the terror of the error. This is handling, casting out the demons. Now, I've told a few people this, but, a few weeks ago we had 3 shootouts, I guess you could call them, in our nation. The third one, when that was going on, it was in the middle of the night or the early hours of the morning. I was having this really vivid dream that I was being attacked by demons. I was in some dark place, and I prevailed. But when I woke up, it was like, oh my gosh, it seems so real. And I had to work the rest of the night to get rid of that sense. And then in the morning, I read that there had been this shootout during the night. And later I read that the person who committed it had been into Satanism. And now all of this talk gun control, this control. No, dude, get them on drugs. Do this, do that. This isn't the problem. They're working. They're looking at the wrong thing. And we as scientists must be working on this. And that's why, because I've read more recently where they have these groups, Linda, of witchcraft, Satanists, people doing these things. Now, I'm not saying this to make you afraid, but I'm saying, well, maybe to wake you up, that this needs to be handled. And so maybe it's taking place in Canada or far away somewhere.
No, it's all over.
It's all over
the United States. It's probably right in your own town, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
They just have these groups, and they
working day and night.
That's what I was going to say. Thank you. Vigorously working day and night. Desperate malice.
Yep. Against Christianity. And you get an impressionable boy or girl or someone going to these things, maybe just out of curiosity, maybe for whatever. And the demons are abounding there. They probably already have them started inside them somewhere anyway, some forms of jealousy or resentment or whatever. And this is what happens. And so this work, just as I've talked about other works, it should be daily work for Christ's Christianity, and nothing can oppose it. That's why I love it in Revelation. Lord of Lords and King of Kings. Don't even think about it. And
I'd like to interject something here.
Yes.
I had an incident of this. I was coming back on a bus from Logan Airport 2 nights ago, and there were some athletes from a college behind me, and they were using obscene language about every other third or fourth word. And there were little children on the bus, and they were just kind of joshing. And I'm not saying they were terrible people, but I mean, I was just appalled. And after about 1 minute of listening to this, I turned around and I said, I am not willing to listen to you guys use this kind of language for the next couple hours, and I really want you to stop. And I was amazed. They were completely quiet for the next hour and a half.
See, that's so true. It's all in your mind that they won't listen. You do it, and if you do it with the authority of Christ, they do listen. Thank you, George.
Yes, and I was thinking about, for like extending past this, we now live in a culture that is so uncivil and narcissistic, and people, play their radios loud. They have obscene conversations in public. They have bumper stickers that were unthinkable decades ago. And it's because I forget who it was who said this, but all that's required for evil to prosper is for good people to do nothing. And I thought about that moment on the bus, and I mean, it felt a little scary. They were big guys, and I'm 68, they're 20 or whatever, and I really felt strong. I need to say something, and it had a huge impact, and I think it probably helped. The mothers across the aisle had a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old to be listening to this garbage, and I thought about how many times we're in a position to do good, and we often don't do it because we're timid or we're afraid or we think we're, encroaching on someone's freedom. Well, to me, that's not freedom. Anyway, it was just it was really gave me pause, and I'm glad that you said what you said in this lesson, because it reinforced that incident and how much good we can do if we're willing to stick our necks out a little bit.
Absolutely. And it works when you do it as you did it. You did it out of love. It was love that motivated you, love for everyone else on the bus. It wasn't hate. If you let it go on and on, pretty soon you get irritated and you feel hateful. But you did it right away. And it works.
And when God directs you, when you feel the Spirit of God moving you to do something or say something, you do it with the power of God. And that was a perfect example. Thank you, George.
Yes.
Really, sometimes the words come out.
I wasn't. I mean, I was a bit upset, but I wasn't angry. I mean, I wasn't like yelling at. I didn't raise my voice. I was just calm and quiet. But I was amazed. I mean, they were basically silent for the next hour and a half.
Well, that's a blessing when somebody points out. I know in my life, when people have pointed out what I've said or maybe something I've done, I had no idea I was coming across that way. And it was a blessing to me that somebody pointed out that I was being a snot or I was being, and it completely changed my behavior going forward because I was completely unaware. So that I'm sure those two fellows were blessed, and they may never speak like that in public again. You never know.
Absolutely. That's right. Be a life-changing moment. Go ahead, Florence.
No, I was going to say, sometimes really when God is directing, you will say words that you know it's not you who said it. And I've seen in my own experience how silent it makes, the one.
Well, you've rebuked the error.
Thank you. Yeah.
Dissipates it.
And that's the point. None of this is personal. When we're doing what God has for us to do, it's not personal. You're addressing error. You're testifying to what's true and good. It's not a personal thing. And that's where the dominion comes from. That's where the power comes from. You have all the power of the universe when God is directing you and when you're obeying the voice that says, here, walk ye, this is the way, walk ye in it.
And no one had ever cared enough to discipline those boys. No one had ever cared enough. We had an instance once on a plane where there was a very undisciplined child right behind us, carrying on. Parents couldn't seem to control it and making a huge amount of noise. And we thought, goodness, we're going to be in here for 3 hours. So Gary just turned around, looked at the kid and said, shut up. And he did. And it was silent for the rest of the plane trip, which shows that it worked. And if it worked, he was thinking of everybody else on the plane too. He wasn't mad. He just was direct. And even the parents were amazed. And nothing happened. The parents didn't, call the authorities, as they sometimes seem to do today. But that's why you can't think about it before you do it. If God inspires you, you just do it. And it will have its perfect effect. Right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and at times not even if it's not right then, somehow later they get it.
They get it. Mm-hmm. They get it.
Well, that's just it. Everyone has a conscience. Right? Mm-hmm. The truth is there. The receptivity is there in everyone. Sometimes their walls are a little thick, but it's okay.
And all of it goes back to the lesson of protecting your Christ consciousness. The one mind, you have to protect it and defend it. It's not just, we were given it, but if you just whittle it away by letting other people talk and disturb your peace or whatever else, well, then you're giving it away. You protect it. And by protecting it, you're helping to protect everyone's Christ consciousness. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, no, this is really a great conversation. I appreciate Gary reminding me, because I tend to take everything personally, or let's say that's a temptation to take things personally. It's like between me and them. I have to remember it's really between them and God, and me and God, whatever the issues are. And this is decades ago when I was in seminary. I was working on a really rough job site. I mean, it was nasty. And there was this guy who just used Christ and God's name in vain, coupled with obscene words. I mean, just all the time. And I took him aside and I said, you know, I just want you to know, when you use language like this, I love God and Jesus Christ. And when you use words like this, I just wince inside. It's like, it's so physically painful to me. It's like if I were talking about your mother, you know, with those words. I said, so I can't make you stop. I don't want you to feel that I'm going to hate you or, you know, go beyond this, but I just need you to know this is just so painful to me, and I really want you to stop. And, you know, he stopped, and he was just one of the grossest, foulest people I'd ever met in my entire life. And then about a month later, he was in a bar fight and got knifed and was in the hospital. And he actually called a friend of his at the job site and asked if I would come and visit him in the hospital. So I had a chance to talk about the Lord. And I mean, it was just amazing how that whole thing came down. And yeah, I was kind of scared of this guy because he was a ruffian. You know, what you know, like I said, the kind of guys who goes in bars and gets in fight with knives. And I was a seminary student, you know, but it was just one of those incidents where God gave me the grace to say something that needed to be said. And I realized how hungry his heart was for something good. And I had a chance to do good. I mean, that's really what it was about. It was about representing something that God wanted in his life.
And that's wonderful. And that's how we should view every experience we have. When God brings us into a situation that definitely needs to be corrected, he gives us the power to say the right thing, to do the right thing. And we shouldn't be afraid of tough experiences. What does Mrs. Eddy say about trials?
Of God's care.
They are proofs of God's care if we see them as opportunities.
And at the same time, you have to be willing, because you mentioned personal sense. All of us have to be willing. If you get corrected, when you are personal about the error and you think the error is yours, it's your whatever, even your disease, your personality, your whatever, you personalize it. It's mine. So if you say anything about it, whoa, you can be, and I don't like it, and I'm not, you will fail to get the blessing. You should be grateful when someone speaks to you, whatever that is, even if they're wrong. We've been taught here, even if they're absolutely off the wall and wrong, you still say, okay, if I did anything to offend you in any way, I am so sorry. I certainly didn't mean it. You make your peace with man and with God, so then you can brush the dust off your feet and go on. But when you go, oh man, they said this about me and that's not true, and you go into all this justification and you chew on it, my friend, you now have a demon dwelling in you. And you end up maybe resenting the person who spoke to you. All kinds of things happen. So sometimes it's easier to give it than it is to take it. So remember this, it is never personal. And even if it is personal, even if the person is, as I said, off the wall, maybe there's some simple thing you can learn from it. So don't react. Don't take it personally. What does Mrs. Eddy say about that?
Reaction? It's the bridge over which error will reach you.
And if someone rebukes you and there's no merit to it, what?
Let it go.
Let it go.
And ask God, if there's any merit to this, I will change. I will take it and I will change. And if there's not, I will let it run off my back.
Like water off a duck's back.
Like what?
Yes. And if there isn't anything, you can do that. If there is something, you can't. You have a fight with yourself. Mrs. Evans used to say that if she would say something, and sometimes she'd say almost bizarre things, and the person reacted, she said, "Whoops, I hit something there." Now, if you don't react, then there truly is nothing in you. There's nothing to react. So if you react, you ask yourself, why am I reacting? What have I personalized? Do I want this error to be part of me that I'm protecting and justifying? Or do I want to get rid of it and grow and be grateful for the person who loved enough to correct you? This is how you keep demons gone, ejected, out. and how you protect your Christ consciousness, the one mind, the only mind there is. And if any of you haven't read, I don't think we'll end on this today, but the story of the two wolves, it's on our website. Well, maybe I'll read it quickly and then I'll let Gary end. An elder Cherokee Native American was teaching his grandchildren about life. He said to them, "A fight is going on inside me. It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One wolf represents fear, anger, envy, sorrow, pride, and hatred. The other wolf represents joy, love, peace, humility, forgiveness, and honesty. This fight is going on inside you and inside every other person, too." Children thought about it for a minute, and then one child asked, "Grandfather, which wolf will win?" And the old Cherokee replied simply, "The one you feed." Okay, well, we will end now with Mrs. Eddy's article, "Choose Ye" in Miscellany. That paragraph.
Choose ye. Christian Science is not a dweller apart in royal solitude. It is not a law of matter, nor a transcendentalism that heals only the sick. This science is a law of divine mind, a persuasive animus, an unerring impetus, an ever-present help. Its presence is felt, for it acts and acts wisely, always unfolding the highway of hope, faith, understanding. It is the higher criticism, the higher hope, and its effect on man is mainly this, that the good which has come into his life, examination compels him to think genuine whoever did it. A Christian Scientist verifies his calling. Choose ye. We cannot serve two masters. Do we love God supremely? Are we honest, just, faithful? Are we true to ourselves? God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. To abide in our unselfed, better self is to be done forever with the sins of the flesh, the wrongs of human life, the tempter and temptation, the smile and deceit of damnation. When we have overcome sin in all its forms, men may revile us and despitefully use us, and we shall rejoice, for great is our reward in heaven.
Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.